I'm John Hanna for CDTV.net in New York, and we have Dirk Dijk, Chief Equity Strategist at Zacks.com, joining us from Dayton, Ohio. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, John.
Dirk, there's not that much economic numbers out there now, but what are your thoughts about what's happening in Europe now?
Well, I think there's a massive mess, and it's looking more and more to me like the Maastricht Treaty was a horrible, horrible mistake. The idea of going to a common currency, and I have very, very real doubts about whether it can survive. What they were attempting to do was to form a monetary union, but with no fiscal union. Right? So, individual countries could then pursue their own, taxing and spending policies, but there, everybody had the same currency, and because of that, then people, sort of had essentially the same interest rates. And then you had the external shock. Some of the countries that are now in trouble were profligate early on. Greece, in particular, they never collect taxes. I mean, tax evasion is the national pastime of Greece, and did put in some pretty generous provisions in terms of spending, in terms of civil servants, got to retire with very nice pensions, and people could retire early, and all that sort of stuff. Other countries, Spain was running budget surpluses prior to the collapse of the housing bubble, which happened not just here, but around the world. And Spain certainly had a housing bubble that was, if anything, proportionally bigger than ours. A lot of people sort of wanted, second houses in sunny Spain, and stuff like that. So you had a real boom going on, and then that collapsed. And so Spain is now one of the countries that's considered in trouble, even though leading up to this they were a model of fiscal rectitude. So I don't think that you can necessarily pin in every case it is some sort of morality play of countries living beyond their means and now have to pay the piper. In the case of Greece, that does seem to apply, but for some of the other countries, not really. But what happens also when you have a common currency where the economic conditions are very, very different. I mean, Greece and Germany are two very different places in terms of the economies that they have, is that Germany essentially started running a really big trade surplus, not just with the rest of the world, but especially with countries like Greece and Portugal and Spain and pretty much everybody else in Europe, possible exception to the Netherlands. But there wasn't a way for that to rebalance. Classically, if a country is running chronic trade deficits, their currency will weaken, and thus everything that they're importing becomes more expensive, and everything that they're exporting becomes more competitive. But if you fix that in a common currency, that just can't happen. I mean, theoretically, Greece would have been able to export more olive oil, not that is that big of an industry, but more importantly, they would devalue the drachma, and everybody in Germany would say, let's go to Mykonos for our 5-week vacation that we have every year. And so then Greece would earn lots of Deutschmarks. But as long as the price levels don't change, the only way to rectify it is essentially to have a internal devaluation. In other words, costs in Greece have to come down to match the costs in Germany. Now, Germany is a lot wealthier and their people get paid a lot more, but they're also way more efficient, right? They really know what they're doing. Greece, even though the people are generally poorer, simply can't compete with Germany at current levels. That means that you have to bring those costs down, you have to lower wage rates to the point where they equalize on the amount of productivity that they have with Germany. And to do that, you really have to impose really, really, really high unemployment levels, right? So everybody gets desperate enough that they're willing to take a job that pays virtually nothing. And that's really painful because you slow the economy as you're doing that, which means that Greece gets less tax revenues to pay off its debts, and then Germany asks for still more austerity, which furthers the process, and we're in this ever downward spiral. So we have sort of similar situations here in the U.S. Mississippi is a lot poorer, but generally not as competitive as in terms of production as, say, Massachusetts. The net result is that Massachusetts and Connecticut and New Jersey tend to send a lot more money to the federal government than they get back. States like Mississippi are perpetually kind of on the federal dole, right? And we've long accepted that here in the U.S. But, essentially, so we have avoided that even though we've got 50 states. But we tend to think of ourselves first and foremost as Americans, not as, a bunch of Buckeyes or Hoosiers, right? If you ask somebody, where are you? You say, I'm an American. In France, somebody will say, I'm French. In Germany, they'll say, I'm German. They won't say, I'm a European. The mindset, based on 2,000 roughly years of history, is very much set by that nationalism, and particularly the past 200 years of history. So to expect that we would form a United States of Europe and be able to do that in a very pretty short order, because the debt situation is coming to a crisis. In order to have a fiscal union to go along with the monetary union, it just seems really impractical to me. What you've got is a situation where Germany in particular, but also the Netherlands and France, the sort of core countries, would have to be ponying up a lot of tax dollars that then get sent to Greece and Portugal and Italy to sort of stabilize their situation. Sort of on the scale that you see a state like Connecticut sending money to to Mississippi or Alaska or something like that. I just don't really see that happening anytime soon. It also means that the countries, the recipient countries, would lose an awful lot of their sovereignty. Essentially, they would be getting taxation without representation, because sure, they can vote for the Greek Parliament in Athens, but it's going to have absolutely zero power. Right? It's going to be like the student council government. Yeah, you can vote for your class president, but so what? What does he get to do? It's still going to be the principal and the teachers and the school board that run the school.
That's Dirk Van Dijk, Chief Equity Strategist at Zacks.com, joining us from Dayton, Ohio, and I'm John Hanna for CDTV.net in New York.